This is Paul Kelly for ESBR Boxing. Delighted to be joined by Frank Smith here in Belfast. Twice in 2 months, Frank. Must be enjoying your time back in Belfast. You love it so much.
Yeah, 100%. Look, we've always loved it. You know, we've had some great nights here over the years. You know, obviously it was a 6-year break for us to come back here, but that was led by talent. We didn't have the fighters signed at that time. Mick was obviously with Top Rank, but as soon as the opportunity arose, we wanted to get back here, and you know, plenty more shows you'll see in Belfast from us over the coming years.
Obviously, Lewis Crocker, main event, the man just standing right beside us here. He was the chief support for the Conlon Gill fight. I remember talking to Eddie, and he said that one of the reasons he hadn't been in Belfast for quite a while was because they didn't have that, that star. Mick was that star. We're now seeing Lewis headline. Is he, do you think, potentially the next star from Belfast?
Yeah, 100%. He's got everything you need. He's got the personality, he's got the talent. You know, he needs to go in there and deliver in the fights. He did that in December, and he's got a tough test on Saturday night. But I believe he'll go in there and it'll be a tremendous performance from him, and deliver many more nights in the future here. And like Eddie said, we are led by talent. But when we come to a place like Belfast where people get behind boxing and get behind the fighters, they're lucky in many regards, the fighters, that they've got that fan base there, because it means promoters will come back.
Absolutely. On the undercard, of course, Paddy Donovan, another welterweight fighting, same weight as Lewis Crocker, the man to your right. I heard you've said in a few interviews that that's a fight, not now, but maybe in the future, that you would love to put on. Is that something that you're looking for?
100%. It's a great fight. It's a great fight, and it's a fight people will tune in for. You know, so many times in the past these kind of fights haven't happened because it's not the right time, or it can happen at a later date. But if we want to keep building and growing the sport of boxing, we need to deliver those kind of fights that gets the public interested. That's the kind of fight that we could go to the SSE with, and it would sell out. That would get people in there, and that's what we need to do to keep building boxing. Boxing in many regards has taken a bit of a backward step, in comparison to the likes of UFC, and that just comes down to the fights. Obviously stars are important, but it comes down to fighters having real fights, and that is a proper fight, and one I think both guys would be up for.
Timeline-wise, obviously, both men have to get through their fights on Saturday night. Is that a fight you can maybe see in the next 12 months, 18 months, 2 years?
I think before that. But let's see. Let's not look past Saturday night. Both guys have got tests on Saturday. They got to get through. But I'm hopeful we can get something like that done.
Another fight I want to ask you about. I was talking to Billy Nelson, obviously trainer of Lewis Crocker, and he's supremely confident that another matchroom fighter, Conor Benn, he says that Lewis Crocker would stop Conor Benn. What about that for a fight down the line?
Yeah, look, I think that's an interesting fight. Conor wants the biggest fights possible, and I think he's obviously got certain things going on in the background. We want to get him fighting back in the UK. That's an ongoing process. He's not suspended. He's cleared to box, so he should be able to box in the UK. But let's see how things play out on that front. But yeah, maybe that's a fight down the line.
Away from Saturday night, a topic I kind of wanted to ask you about, and I'm not too sure if you watched the Natasha Jonas-Michaela Meyer fight on the weekend, but I'm sure you've probably seen on social media a lot of people kind of having their say, of course, as they like to do, about the scoring. What I wanted to ask you about is, we see in the UFC, for example, there is a kind of a unified scoring criteria. Do you think that in boxing we'll ever be in a position where there is one scoring criteria that all judges and referees have to abide by, or do you think that's something that probably is a wee bit beyond the realms of possibility?
The tough thing is with boxing, scoring is subjective. I couldn't score a fight to save my life, I'm being completely honest with you. A load of people would say Sasha deserved to win that fight. It was a close fight if it would have gone either way by a point or so. I didn't watch it myself. I try and, when I've got one weekend off boxing, I try and escape boxing. So no disrespect, it was a great fight, did great numbers and a great build-up as well. But I think it's difficult. It's always going to be a difficult thing. I think the only thing we can do, and in many occasions it's quite clear when there's clear incompetence from people in terms of scoring, is there has to be a harsher line from these sanctioning bodies, commissions, around people's ability to score. And looking back at, look, I think when a fight's 1 point here or there, and many people say it's around those sort of levels, I think it's hard to argue, is the truth. But I think when people show clear incompetence, then they shouldn't be able to judge fights until they show they can improve.
And do you think part of the problem is, I'll use that again as an example just because it was in the most recent example, that was for an IBF title, yet it was in Britain, so it was under the jurisdiction of the British Boxing Board of Control. They've kind of got different rules maybe and different scoring criteria. Do you think that's part of the problem?
No, because it's international judges as well. For a fight of that size, a world title fight, you'd usually have a British referee, a British judge, and then probably a US judge and a neutral judge. So, in terms of, there's certain rules, but more followed by the referee themselves. It's not in terms of scoring the fight itself. They're international judges that work all around the world. And I think actually the scorecard for Tasha was not done by the British, or I think it was done by maybe the neutral judge. One of the scorecards, a neutral judge. But I think, the only way we can improve it is by the sanctioning bodies taking a stance. Now, look, when it comes to officials for fights, we don't get involved with selecting officials. Sometimes in contracts you'll agree the makeup of officials, i.e. the territories they're from, can't be from these territories because they may show bias, for example. But when it comes to the territories for themselves, the fighters get the opportunity to veto. And then it goes back to the sanctioning bodies and they decide whether they're going to change the officials. But the only way it can improve is by the likes of the sanctioning bodies, the local commissions actually taking a stance when there is clear incompetence. As I say, it's hard when it could be argued a point either way.
And so do you think, and last question on this, do you think then that in boxing, in the sport as a whole, we're probably not in the position where anytime soon we will see a universal scoring criteria or like the one belt kind of thing as well, just like the UFC?
I think until the sport is brought together by one central organisation, which I don't see happening, and when I talk about one central organisation, I'm not just talking about one sanctioning body, but one commission. Because people have to understand there might be WBC, IBF, WBA, WBO. Then every state in America, you've got an individual commission. You've got the British Boxing Board of Control, you go to Poland, you've got the Poland, there's so many different commissions. If we're talking about bringing it all together under one umbrella, that's a big job. So, I'd love to see it, I just, in all reality, don't see that happening.
Last couple from me, obviously, I saw an interview you did yesterday regarding Wood Warrington potential rematch at the City Ground. Is there any further update on that?
Not yet. Look, we want to make that fight happen. It's a great fight, but we're waiting on the City Ground on that. So we'll see what comes back and work from there. We've done everything we can up until this point, and it sits with them right now.
And is that the only way that the rematch with Warrington happens, if it is at the City Ground? If not, will it be a different opponent for Lee?
Possibly. I think that's the fight that makes sense at that venue in terms of financially as well. But we'll have to wait and see, and then we move from there.
And looking away as well, another potential trilogy between Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron. Obviously talked to the nth degree about taking that to Croke Park. And is there any update on that?
No, conversations ongoing with Croke Park and the government. These aren't conversations that take place overnight, though. Any government around the world, it takes time. You have to go through a process. The focus for us, though, is to get back to Dublin. Whether it's Croke Park, whether it's Aviva, whether it's the Three Arena again. We saw two of the best nights I think we've ever seen in the sport. And that was thanks to both Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron delivering tremendous performances. At the end of the day, people want to see great fights, and they both delivered in those. So it's 1-1, and I'd love to see that fight again. So hopefully some news soon. We need to move quickly. We're looking at May for that next fight, so hopefully we can get up and running soon.
Just the last one from me, was there I've heard potential rumours that if Mick Conlon does continue, that would be maybe a perfect card for him to have on the undercard. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, possibly. I think, we'd love to continue working with Mick Conlon. We had a great night here in December. He's got to make the decision as to what he wants to do. He's done so many things both in the professional and amateur sport, and he's fortunate because of his hard work and the position he's in that he could retire tomorrow financially. Not all fighters have got that ability, but whether if Mick decides that he wants to carry on, that's his decision to make. If he decides to retire, you have to commend him for the career he's had. So we'll wait and see what he chooses.
Brilliant. Well, I'll not take up any more of your time, Frank. Thanks very much for speaking to ESPR Boxing.
Cheers, Ben.